Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole. I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. And this podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach. And it's all about embracing our mosaic life. Now, some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? Well, it is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, and even the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. So if we change any one thing, we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life, and I am your host. And now I have a special guest that I'll be introducing in just a moment. But before I do, I would love to ask you to do me a solid, and that is leave a comment, ask a question, and then always remember to like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. So this lovely lady right here is Karen DeBonis. And I don't know her very well, but we are actually part of a collective group of people. And she was in that group, and it was like there was this connection. And so that's why she's here today. And to be honest with you, I don't know a lot about her. And I love when that happens so that we can explore all of this together. So if you don't mind, just give everybody that's watching or listening just a
Mhm.
little small synopsis of who you are, and then
Sure.
we'll get into just having a conversation.
Sure. And thanks so much, Vicki, for having me. And I too, I love just this, kind of off the top cuff kind of conversation. So I think this will be a good time. So as Vicki said, I'm Karen DeBonis, and I'm an author. And here's my book cover back there. I don't know, it may be backwards for you.
No,
Sometimes
it's looks right.
it is. Oh,
Yeah,
good. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm married. I have two adult sons. I live in upstate New York. For most of my life, my career has been in health education and health promotion. And in 2016, I stopped working for various reasons and returned to writing the memoir that I had started like 25 years before. And so since 2016, I've really created this new life as I felt like a writer wannabe at first because I had so much to learn. And then I did get my memoir published last year, and now I do freelance writing. And yeah, so that's pretty much, how I spend my days.
Ah, well, it sounds like a good way to spend your days, I will say. So did you grow up in New York as well?
Nope, I actually grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and I went to school in Washington, D.C., Catholic University of America. And my husband, who's from Troy, New York, where we live now, also went to Catholic U, and that's where we met our senior year. So he's my college sweetheart. We've been married. Oh my goodness, it'll be 42 years next Wednesday.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so we
Well,
um,
congratulations on that one.
thank you. Yeah, and we've stuck it out through thick and thin. I should have mentioned the title of my book is Growth, A Mother, Her Son, and the Brain Tumor They Survived. So that gives you an idea that, we've had
Ups and
some,
downs.
yep, some tough, times to live through. And I just consider us so blessed that we, stuck it out and we actually still like each other even. So,
That's
it's,
the big thing. Some people
yeah,
stick it out, but they don't like each other,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So
Yeah,
that's
and people
beautiful.
grow apart. I mean, I just think that's who we are, and we have managed to grow together. So, talk about privilege, what a privilege that is to have found the person that really, stuck it out with me and that I stuck it out with him.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I'm thinking as you were talking about all of that, we the challenges that we face, we always have challenges. There's not
Mhm.
a soul alive. It's
Yep.
just there's different degrees, and it depends on who you
Mhm.
are, whether that's a big
Mhm.
degree or a small degree.
Right.
And one of the things I always talk about in my group, the Stand Up and Stand Out community on Facebook,
Mhm.
is that every one of those challenges were put for us to be able to get strong enough to handle whatever was coming. And
Mhm.
that doesn't mean strong because it's going to be bad. That could be strong because it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
just need to learn the lessons to be able to handle whatever it is. And that's why
Mhm.
lottery winners a lot of times end up in a year, 2 years, they're way more worse
Yeah.
off than they were
They're
before they
broke.
ever won the money, because they
Yeah.
didn't have the personal growth that they needed
Mhm.
to have to
Mhm.
handle all that financial affluence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so every time I tell my people, let's be an explorer, and we can even go
Mhm.
back and look at some of the things that have happened in our lives that we
Mhm.
thought were catastrophes. And
Yeah.
if we can extract a lesson, a, a, a new thought, a new idea, a new way of being from that
Mhm.
thing, then it's done its purpose and we don't have to worry about it anymore. I think it's when we don't extract all that stuff out of it that it
Yeah.
still stays in our mind because
Yeah.
it's just some catastrophe that happened to us.
Yeah.
And so I love that you put your stuff in a book, you've got
Mhm.
your husband, and you've been able to have this. It's like a community when you have a family
Mhm.
that you can
Yeah.
rely on.
Yeah.
And so it's beautiful. So do you want to maybe share a little bit about, I know it says the brain tumor that you survived. So who had the brain tumor?
Yeah, my son had the brain tumor.
Okay.
So my older son, Matt, we in the book, when he was younger, we called him Matthew, was diagnosed with a brain tumor at 11. And
Mm,
and the reason I'll just talk about the title for a minute. So it's so interesting that you're talking about, kind of extracting lessons from the trials that we go through and hopefully looking for the growth opportunities. That may be my words, but my title really is that kind of play on words with growth. So when my son was diagnosed, what they said was, we found a growth. So growth just became this,
4-letter word.
powerful, shocking, word.
Yeah.
Um, but I've always been a real believer in personal growth, and I've always, tried to be better and learn, what are those lessons about, when things go
Mm-hmm.
wrong in life or things go good in life. And so, growth is really that kind of has multiple meanings in the title. And the reason why I chose the subtitle that I did, the brain tumor they survived, was because and I'm sure most mothers and fathers out there understand, when your child goes through something, you go through it with them. And especially when it's a medical crisis, my son survived, his brain tumor, but I survived it also because it
Mm-hmm.
was, as you can imagine, a tough time. And really, in a lot of ways, I look at my story as surviving motherhood. I thought I was ready to be a mom. Married my college sweetheart. He's a great guy. My parents were great role models. I babysat all the time. I'm the second oldest of 6 kids and the oldest daughter. So, I babysat my siblings, babysat neighborhood kids all the time. I really thought I was ready. And when Matthew was born, it was a healthy pregnancy, and he was just so colicky and so inconsolable, really, for 6 months. Then I felt like a failure. I thought, I thought I was supposed to be a natural. What's like,
Yeah.
this is a mistake. And so, then we kind of, he outgrew the colic, and we kind of got to this place of equilibrium. And I thought, okay, we had another son 5 years later. They're 5 years apart. And I thought, okay, I got this working mom thing down. We're okay. And then Matt started having unusual symptoms, tics, motor tics mostly. And then his grades were dropping, and he was becoming clumsy, and all these things were going
Hmm.
on. And a big part of my story is myself being a people pleaser. And one of the things that struck me, why you kind of caught my eye with your podcast, was because of your group. I forget the name of it again, the Speak Up.
Stand up and stand out community.
Yeah, stand up and stand out. And for me, I was raised to be a good girl. and my parents were both people pleasings. My dad also in a lot of ways. So, I just took that to heart so much. I wanted so badly to be nice and kind to people. And, you know, uh, we were a very involved Catholic family. And so I wanted to I wanted to be a good child of God and, follow those principles and that type of thing. And I think I just took it overboard in my head and I didn't learn how to stand up for myself.
Mhm.
And so when my son was, going through these difficulties and the pediatrician wasn't really listening, I just I didn't
You
know
mean
how to
when
speak.
you were going and he was showing symptoms of something and they were
Yes,
acting like it was nothing?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
I
So there
just
was
want
a
to make sure
lot
I
of
understood what you were saying.
yes, no, and anytime to stop me, for
Oh, I
clarification.
will.
Yeah. So there was a lot of medical gaslighting, which is when, a medical person is dismissive of a patient's, concerns that they present or symptoms. And so I think of it as, kind of this collision of my people pleasing and the medical gaslighting. And so, none of my concerns were getting through because I wasn't speaking up loudly enough and soon enough. And the doctor just started digging their heels in more and more. And my husband, who's a great guy and a wonderful father, you know, he just couldn't see what was going on, for
Mm.
a number of different reasons. I go to it in the book, but he just didn't see what I saw. And so what happened was he went undiagnosed for 3 years, and that just made his recovery all the more difficult because even though it was a benign tumor, it caused some damage to his brain. So he has things that he's needed to deal with his whole life. And
So
and I
what
will
did they go in and remove the tumor?
No, it was considered inoperable because it
Okay.
was right on the brain stem, which is, kind of the where your spinal column and your brain meet, kind of like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't want to go in and try to get to it. And because it was benign, well, it was benign and slow growing. Not all benign tumors are slow growing, but his was. So, but the problem was it had caused severe hydrocephalus, which is literally water on the brain, and
Okay.
it was interfering with the flow of cerebral spinal fluid. So the fluid was being retained in his skull, and that's what was causing the problem. So they did a surgery where they actually go in and poke a hole, and they put a little shunt, and it helps to drain the fluid. And well, I want to get back to that shunt thing in a minute, but
Okay.
and so that was the beginning of his recovery. So he didn't need chemo or radiation or anything like that, but it was just um, his brain had been kind of under siege for at least 3 years. The doctor said the tumor might have been there since birth.
Hmm.
And so he had a long time of recovery. And for me, you know, I I found my voice and got my son diagnosed. But then, I wish that was the end of the story. You'd like to think that, oh, this mom,
And
this
now it's
passive,
roses.
exactly, like
Yeah.
this mom became this, this passive mom became this warrior mom, and nobody, she spoke up to everybody, and nobody, walked all over her anymore. But for different reasons that I go into the book, that was not my story. And it took me a long time to really realize that, I got to do this once and for all. I have to fight to overcome my people pleasing and learn to speak up, which I have
Yeah.
been able to do. I call myself a recovering people pleaser with some lapses or occasionally relapsing.
Yeah. Uh, well,
So,
the reason I started my podcast was because I'd spent my whole life filtering my voice. So I didn't stand up for myself. I was the people pleaser in the family, and I always wanted to be the peacekeeper. So if I
Yeah.
saw a conflict over here, I wanted to step in and help
Mhm.
diffuse things, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, and then I learned over time that different people that you talk to, if you want it to all go well, you adopt a certain type of language pattern, you
Mhm.
adopt a body language, you adopt all
Yeah.
these things. And I adapted to that very easily.
Mhm.
And so I was able to fit into just any crowd that I got into.
Yeah.
And after a while, it was like, well, who the hell am I?
Oh,
I don't even
so
know.
yeah.
And so I kept thinking, so how can I start speaking without this fear of retribution or
Mhm.
fear of
Yeah.
somebody making
Yeah.
fun of me or
Yeah.
anything, right?
Mhm.
And so I'd been listening to some podcasts and I thought, a podcast would work
Mhm.
because then I create this podcast on this platform. I don't
Mhm.
even see the people that are looking at it or listening to it.
Right.
And if I don't
Right.
want to look at the things that people say, I just
Yeah.
don't look.
Right.
So I started just with that. I wanted to be able to be authentically me. And that's
Yeah.
why there's no editing, because
Mhm.
I thought it was counterintuitive to want
Yeah.
to be able to speak my voice and my truth and then
Mhm.
go in and edit the words I say.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
thought that doesn't make any sense. That's just
Right.
perpetuating the old behavior. And
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
why I don't edit or anything. Um, but
Well, let me just say kudos
yeah,
to you for taking that step, because I think that's sometimes what it takes is something active, something really intentional to kind of break out of this behavior. It's not as easy as saying, "Oh, just say no if somebody asks you to do something,"
yeah,
"Oh, I
yeah.
wish it was that easy,"
Yeah, that's
but
right. That's right. Well, it's definitely been, I say it's the day my life changed was when I started my podcast.
mm,
And I started it, I avoided it for 3 years, thought
mm,
about it for 3 years because I thought that's going to be too hard. I'm not a techie person. I don't know how to do that.
mm,
So who do I think I am
yeah.
starting a podcast? That's for other people. And
Mhm.
then when I noticed it on Facebook, she had this start a podcast challenge. And I thought, okay, what's the worst that can happen?
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I started it. And like I said, that's the day my life changed. But I get to meet amazing people like you. I'm
Oh,
in
thank you.
Stacy's group, and I've had
Yeah,
the most amazing guests on my podcast. And I just love every minute of it. It's
yeah.
become part of my self-care to
Mhm.
actually be able to care for me is my podcast.
Wow, that's really
Yeah.
inspirational.
Thank you. And I think that's probably what your book is for you, right?
Yeah, the book, and kind of similar to you, it was, so when you write a book, it's not just a matter of writing a book. And I did not have an agent and a big like Random House Books,
Mm-hmm.
publisher. I have a small university publisher, but it's really up to the author to put themselves out there and kind of build their platform and get their name out there and what they talk about and what they want to write about, so people begin to associate them. Like in my writing circles a number of years ago, people thought of me as oh yeah, I'm the people pleasing writer because that's what that was kind of my focus. So for me, it was when I started putting myself out there on Facebook
Mm-hmm.
and kind of admitting, and I had a blog for a while, and admitting these little stories where it was so hard for me to speak up, and it was embarrassing and humiliating to admit it. But I just felt like if I'm going to be honest in my book, and I really, and that's probably one of the biggest comments that I'll get back is like, wow, you were really, honest and really just, owned my truth. I thought, well, if I'm going to do it in the book,
Better
I
do it out
gotta
here.
start, yeah, I
Yeah.
gotta start getting used to it. And so for me, that kind of made it so I couldn't hide anymore. I put
Yeah.
myself out there, and a couple of things happened. One is that mostly women, but some men too, would reach out to me privately, like in a personal message or on my contact page. And they basically they would say, yeah, I struggle, like I struggle with that too. And so I was validated to know that putting my truth out there let somebody else know they weren't alone. And so for them, that's their opportunity now for personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the comments that I got from people, um, and there was something else I was going to say, but I forget what it was.
Well, I've been doing that all day long.
Yeah.
Earlier today, I was recording a podcast and I started into the spiel, and all of a sudden I thought, well, I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah.
I said, I'll
Yeah.
think of it later. I still don't know what it was, but
Yeah. 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 Well, I hear you there. So,
when you got a lot of stuff going on anyway, right?
right. Right.
So I got a
Yeah.
question for you.
Yeah.
Um, when you were a really young girl in
Mhm.
like middle school,
Yeah.
not to high school yet, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
I don't know that I really had a goal. I know when I got a little bit older, well, I think, like in high school, I wanted to be a psychologist, a child psychologist. So, I got a bachelor's degree in psychology, but I didn't pursue it after that. But yeah, I don't know that I had. I
So
think
what
so
did
much
you
of
like
it.
to do the most? Like, was it like drawing, painting? Was it skating, dancing, singing?
I was very much was and still am an introvert. So I
Okay.
was very much, I had friends, but I really liked loner type activities. So I loved to paint. I loved to do, my mom was always doing craft things. So we were always
Mm-hmm.
doing craft things. So I loved to create and I loved solitude. Um, I did like to ice skate, but I was never athletic and I was always afraid. I was afraid of falling and afraid of getting hurt. So those creative solitary things were what I really, really enjoyed. So in a lot of ways, writer, now that I'm a writer really fits that
Mm-hmm.
in ways that my earlier career was very much out there in front of people. I taught classes and facilitated groups and I loved it, but it was also looking back now, I can see how exhausting that was, especially when my kids were young. You work all day in this very active, kind of people-oriented um, environment. And then I came home and I had two kids that I had to get homework done and dinner on the table and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, I bet you there's every mom that's listening and knows exactly what you're talking about.
yep,
I know I
yep,
do.
yep,
And I worked a full-time job and had my kids, and then when you get home, that's when the second full-time job starts in. You
exactly,
know,
exactly. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I used to get so aggravated sometimes. My husband would say, um, I'm going to the store or something. And I'd say, well, wait a minute. How come when I'm going to the store, I have to say, can you watch the kids?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did you not think to ask me if I'd watch the kids? Well, that's what you
Right.
do.
Right.
Those are fighting words.
Yeah. 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 And in my book, I talk a lot about the whole, you know, um, the roles in marriage and you know, just how, we like my husband and I both kind of fell into the traditional roles and just makes life harder.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will say if I ever get into another relationship, because my children's he's deceased. He's been gone for like 23 years.
Oh my
But if I
God.
ever got into another relationship, I would do all the marriage counseling before.
Yeah, right,
You
right,
know, and
right.
I've got a couple of people in my group that are actually relationship experts. And
Hmm.
so I've even told one of them, I said, okay, if I get into a relationship, we're going to have a conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's smart.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, why did you ask what I wanted to do when I was a kid?
I don't know. I always like to know if what you're doing now has
Hmm.
any kind of um attachment or something from that time, because I find
Yeah.
everybody that I ask that, a lot
Hmm.
of people say what you did was I really didn't have any goals. I didn't have any. So, but then when they start talking about it, there's something about what they did when they were little or they loved
Yeah.
doing when they were little that actually kind of fueled in some ways where they're
Hmm.
at now. So I just wanted to know.
That's so interesting. Well, I was since 2016, I was pretty committed to this writing and really like just nose to the grindstone all the time. But once my book came out and I could breathe a little bit, although I was doing, heavy marketing, especially last year, I kind of step back. I've always loved to garden, but I think I did a little, not painting like an oil paint or anything, but just some little crafty things. And then at Christmas time, I asked for a sewing machine because mine had been broken for about 15 years. And I have been having so much fun with my sewing machine. And I think I realized that as much as I enjoy the writing, sometimes I really hate the writing. Like
Hmm.
it's just very taxing, on one's brain. Um, I'm not like some people that really just, always find it joyful, but sometimes it's really, really hard. But boy, that it's like the more the tactile artistry things and more visual art. I mean, that stuff, I
You
could just
lose
do that
total
all.
track of time with that,
Yeah,
don't you? Yeah.
yeah, I could
Yeah.
do it all day long.
Yeah, my daughter loves to sew and she does crocheting. She does all these things. She teaches herself how to do it. And
Mm,
when, just to let you know, when I was in school and I started learning how to sew, which I really
mhm.
can't do, we made like an apron.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the first thing that she made, a full dress.
Wow,
And it's
wow.
like, oh my God. And it looked gorgeous. And I thought, how do you do that? But she's
Yeah,
just that way. Now I
yeah.
can draw and paint and all that stuff, but I could probably sew if I really wanted to, but it just
Mhm.
doesn't draw me in, you
Yeah,
know?
then it's
And
yeah.
so like she loves doing all that and she's done some needlepoint and
Mhm.
she likes it, I think, because sometimes you can mindlessly be doing it. So she can
Yeah.
be doing like the crocheting and stuff, especially
Mhm.
just sitting and watching TV.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
it looks beautiful when she's done, and I'm thinking, I would think you'd have to be counting stuff, you'd have to be, but I guess there's muscle memory or something, but
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
does amazing things with that. So you said you've got another son, or you, right?
Mhm. Right, right. Two sons. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about Matt, who was the kind of the hero of the story. So he
Okay.
turned 38 a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and he lives on his own. He bought his own home in 2019, just a little 2 bedroom, 1 bath bungalow, perfect for one person. He
Mm-hmm.
does have a long-term girlfriend, but they don't live together. They both have their separate spaces. And he works full time. He works in the New York State Tax Department. And he drives and he does like woodworking in a spare time. And so he's doing very well. But he considers this is his language. He has a brain injury, which he does from what he went through. And
Mm-hmm.
so it causes, I call them hiccups, like he gets dates and facts mixed up sometimes, and short-term memory is sometimes a little bit spotty. So he definitely has challenges that he's always working with, but he still just amazes me all the time. I mean, again, talk about being blessed. So many parents are not this lucky when they've gone
Mm-hmm.
through medical ordeals, and we have been, very blessed. And so, I feel sad when he struggles, but I know that he will get through it because he's also very resourceful and,
Yeah.
takes care of
Well,
himself.
when you've got a good enough support system, you can
Mhm.
endure almost anything.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he's very lucky that he has parents and another sibling that are there to help with the hiccups.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I do feel he lives about 20 minutes from us, and I wouldn't want to be any further away. In fact, I wish she only lived 10 minutes away, um but yeah, we're really committed to being here. And then our younger son Steve, he lives in Boston. He got married last year, and to a lovely, lovely, lovely woman, and we just she's like the daughter I never had, so we're just thrilled with that. And yeah, so they're doing
So
well.
what are you are hoping that having the book out and people reading it and hopefully leaving a wonderful review.
Mhm.
So anybody that decides to buy the book, make sure you leave a review.
Thank you for that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And I will have in the description, I will
Mhm.
have all of your links. I know you put that in that form,
Wonderful.
and
Yep,
that's
thank
got the
you.
book link, I'm assuming too.
Mhm.
So I'll have all
Yep,
of that in there. So anybody that's interested in the book can just click the link
thank you.
and to go get it. But make sure you always leave a review.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, reviews just, I mean, I'm sure a lot of your listeners know this, but they kind of change the Amazon algorithm so more people see a book that's been reviewed, and the more reviews, the better. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so thank you for that.
Yeah. So what do
Um,
you feel like you would want to be to come out of this book for people?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've written a lot of essays, and I've had them published, so I want to continue to do that. But I also want to kind of get on the speaking circuit. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of my career, I did, public speaking and facilitated groups and gave talks and that type of thing. And I really enjoy that, even though I'm an
I
introvert,
was about to say you're an introvert, but there
I
are people that other people that do that. I had a client just to really quick. I had a client that she's a keynote speaker, but she's
Mhm.
very introverted. But what that meant was she could get up there and she could just keynote all day, but
Yeah,
put her
yeah.
in the mix of the people in the crowd or
Mhm.
going to a networking event, she'd be pouring sweat and hiding in the corner.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, it's much more difficult. And actually a lot of from what I've read, a lot of actors, big like movie stars are actually introverts. So they can be out there, whether it's the stage or the screen, they can put themselves out there like that, but they still need that solitude, just to kind
Mm-hmm.
of recover. So an interesting step I'm taking in that direction of kind of getting on the speaking circuit. This is actually a really cool thing that happened. So in my story, we had tons of doctors, tons of crazy, crazy diagnoses. And the child psychologist who was the first specialist that we really worked with when my son was young, he was kind of one of the good guys. He believed me that something was wrong. He coached me to, push for answers. So he was really critical to the positive outcome that we had. I tried to track him down when I was working on my book, and I just never connected with him. And I didn't want to push because I thought, okay, maybe even though I was very clear that, look, I'd like to thank you for the help that you gave us, maybe he didn't want to connect with a former patient. That's okay. So, but then around the time my book came out, which was May 2023, I don't remember if I found him on Facebook, but somehow we ended up being connected on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came to one of my book launches, which was so thoughtful and just so cool to connect with him. And he and I now are collaborating on some
Ooh.
talks that we're going to give. Yep, we have only one scheduled so far in November at a local library, and it's going to be about patient-parent communication and the
Mm.
whole kind of the outcome that we want is, I want to give parents some tips about how they can communicate better with their doctors or their children's doctors. And he's going to give some tips about not only what doctors can do, but kind of this is the doctor's perspective on different things. Because when I talked with him recently, when I pitched this idea to him, I said, how did you decide that I was believable? Because like I said, there was a lot of medical gaslighting. The doctors weren't listening to me. I was just the mere mom that had raised my
Mm-hmm.
son. Um, and so we talked through that a little bit. I don't have specifics I can give you right now, but I just think that's, you know, patient patient practitioner communication is so troubled. I hear
Mm-hmm.
from so many women, and there's lots of articles out there now about medical gaslighting. It's just such a problem for so many people. So I'm hoping that this will kind of open up that discussion with patients and, with some doctors. And I'll throw this out there. We know it's going to be early November. It is going to be Zoomed at the library, so anybody can participate, which
Okay.
I think is really great. So
Yeah.
I don't have a specific date and time for that yet, but if anybody, any of your listeners would like to, be notified when that is, just sign up on my newsletter. You can even unsubscribe later if you want. I won't hold you to it, but just sign up and I'll make sure to send a notice out when that is scheduled. So I hope that that's something that we can kind of take on the road and spread that a little bit. And then, you know, I have messages I want to get out about people pleasing, and also about, I think, just letting parents know that they are heard in terms of their struggles with medical crises and with children with neurodiversity and those type of things. So, you know, I'm going to be looking for opportunities to speak about that.
Yeah, and one of the things that came to mind as you were talking about this, and I don't know if it's anything that you guys would be speaking on, but I have a friend who has a autistic son, and
Mhm.
he's functioning. So
Mhm.
he goes to school now. He's 18 now.
Mhm.
And so that means that the doctors don't talk to her anymore. They talk
Yeah.
to him. Well, he's not high functioning enough
Right.
for all of that. And so she wants to go and ask the doctors and be there and everything.
Mhm.
And so she said the other day, she said, it's really hard now because he's now to this age that I'm not supposed to be a part of it, but
Right.
he still has to live at home. He still
Mhm.
has, to us have to do everything. He'll live with them his whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so is that anything that you guys have ever thought about talking about with, how do people, is there a way to make that where they can communicate with the doctors without going outside the rules, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But my heart
Well,
was going out to her when she was talking to me about it.
oh, yeah. Well, I'm not sure that's something that he and I would talk about specifically, but I have a sister with very severe, debilitating chronic illnesses. And I was with her. She lives she's back and forth between Chicago and California, but I was with her recently, and she was filling out her paperwork, and she designated me as, it wasn't like, it wasn't healthcare proxy, but it was something about how I would be able to call and get information on her. So I think if that mom, you know, Vicky, if I can figure out what that form is, I'll just send it to you personally for your friend.
Okay.
But
Yeah. And then I can just share
she
it with
should be
her.
able to fill out something that will enable her not only to be there with her son and advocate for him, but also to call and get information. And if there are test results, that they would send them to her. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, so
if you can figure out what that is,
I will.
just
Yeah,
send it to me and I'll just
yeah,
pass that along to her.
yeah,
Cause
I will
like I said,
definitely.
when you were just talking about that, that was the thing that just popped in my mind because I just
Yeah.
had this conversation with her like a week and a half ago.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine that's a very scary time, you know, when your
Mm-hmm.
child is aging out of the, you know, the school system, but not able to be independent. And how do you, you know, work all that out?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
wish her luck.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. All right. So, we've talked about your book and we've talked about all the things with your kids.
Yeah.
Well, it just feels like there's some kind of juicy something that you want to share. Is there
Yeah.
anything?
Hmm. I'm pretty like pretty boring. But you know, I
I
will
don't think you're
say,
boring at all.
yeah, well, thanks. But I mean, I don't know that I have anything really juicy
Well,
that I would
juicy could
share.
be depending on who you're talking to.
True, true. But here, I'll throw this out. This is something I think about. So,
Okay.
like, once my book came out, and like I said, I was marketing for a while, and I'm still, you know, working on it, but there's a part of me that feels like, what do I want to do when I grow up? You know, because I'm 65, so, you know, I don't picture myself going, and I do have health issues, which is why I left my job in 2016. So I couldn't really go back to a regular job, but obviously I'm competent. I can do different things. So, you know, I'm thinking about this whole writing life, and how far do I want to take this? And not that I have to decide now, but you know, I'm not sure how long I'm going to do it. And then, you know, I do have a son that's married, so maybe I'll be a grandma someday, and that will take some of my energy. And you know, but it's kind of exciting to think about that. Like, there are
Yeah.
volunteer opportunities that I always wanted to do, and I just, you know, with my son, I just couldn't seem to work them out. And then, you know, after he was gone that I had health issues. So, but I think I could do some of that now. So
So
I
the
don't know.
world is your oyster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love it. I love
I have to think
it.
about that.
Yeah. So
Um,
beautiful. Well, whatever the health issues are, I hope that they get calmer and you're blessed with a healthy body and mind.
Thank you very much. I
I was trying to
appreciate
think,
it.
how do you say that?
Yeah, yeah. No, that I like that.
All
That
right.
sounds good.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Well,
yeah.
we're getting close to time.
Okay.
So, one of the things, let me see, was there anything else that I wanted to ask you?
And I'm
Hmm.
thinking, okay, juicy, juicy, juicy. Let's see.
Anything coming up?
Oh,
Well, let's go with this. What
yeah.
is your taking the writing off the table, okay?
Hmm.
Because but I
Hmm.
know that's not always your passion thing. That's something that
Right,
you do because you
right.
love, but maybe
Yeah.
not passion.
Hmm.
But if you could take and do anything in the world that you wanted
Mm-hmm.
to today,
Mm-hmm.
and money wasn't an issue, time wasn't an issue, it's just something like, oh, if I could do this, oh, it would feel so good. What would that be?
Wow, wow. Well, it would be definitely something kind of art or creative related.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I would, it would definitely involve like a house near the beach somewhere,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we're landlocked where we are. Uh,
Mm.
and I don't know, it would be, like if I could, I'd love to create something that would be useful for other people and just give it away. Like I imagine myself on a beach, and I never thought about this, so this is a great, great prompt, your question. I imagine myself on a beach, lots of windows with the breeze coming in, but not too hot,
Mm-hmm.
and just sitting and making little things and then like taking them down the beach and handing them out to kids or parents or whatever. That would give me such joy.
Yeah, that
So
sounds
I'm gonna have to
beautiful.
I'm
And
gonna
you
have
know
to
what
think
comes up
about
for me when you say that
that. Hmm.
is that that means that your book just takes off. Your
Mm,
speaking engagements just take off
mm.
because you have to be doing something amazing that's bringing in money to allow you to have that beach house and do all
Exactly.
these crafts and hand them out to people, right? That's why we
Exactly.
do some of the major things that we do
Yeah.
because then
Mhm.
it gives us this ability to just
Right.
do. So,
Yeah.
man, put that on
Yeah.
your vision board because
Yes, I'm gonna manifest that,
that's
definitely.
right. That's right. I can
Definitely.
see it right now. I can see it.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So, one of the things that I wanted to just say is I wanted to tell you thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. And I hope everybody goes in and gets the book and
Yeah.
leaves a review.
Mhm.
And I will go ahead and leave us with my favorite quote. And it is the best way to predict the future is create it. And so
Mhm.
that's what you're doing with that vision in your mind.
Yes,
You're
yes.
creating it right in this
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
So I feel
I love
privileged to
that.
have seen that happen right in front of my eyes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed this conversation.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, for all of our viewers and our listeners, I'm so appreciative of each and every one of you. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you next time. Mwah.